Hello guys and gals, and today we will be reading Horsefly by Alice Hoffman with paintings by Steve Johnson and Lou Fancher. Anyways, I picked this book up from a book sale a long time ago. And it's a cute little book. But yeah. It also has a nice little dust jacket on it, but as you can see, these paintings are beautiful, and I believe that it said on the front that these were actually paintings. So, yeah. I think that the back cover, the back cover mirrors that. But yeah. So yeah, we are going to read this, and we can probably do it in one go. And then there's somebody is really good with art. This is copyright 2 by Hyperion Books, which I think, doesn't Disney own Hyperion Books now? I don't remember. But, here, let me just unplug this. That cable is just... I need to replace that cable. Okay. It says, to Wolf and to Jake and my friends who love animals. AH, which would stand for Alice Hoffman. And to Cassie, who loves books. SJ and LF, that's Steve Johnson and Lou Fancher? Lou Fancher. Okay, and it's copyright 2000. So let's get started here. There we have a brown horse. Probably a mare, I don't know. On the edge of a prairie so wide it was called the Sea of Grass was a town where everyone loved horses. As soon as a stranger walked into town, he could smell horses and the sweet scent of hay. At night, babies in their cribs would fall asleep to the sound of horses snoring out in the corrals. And in the morning they woke to the rolling echoes of horses running free in the pasture. People here were worth the sum of their horses. How many you own meant more than how much money you had in the bank. The richest man in town was Florian Taylor, who owned Cloud Ranch, where he kept 40 white horses, the finest in town. Okay, I don't see any white horses yet. We did see that there were some white horses right here. Oh, there we are. There's some. When you looked up at Cloud Ranch on a clear day, those horses did look exactly like clouds. When they all ran together, the ground began to tremble, and Florian Taylor's granddaughter, Jewel, hid under the bed. She covered her ears with her hands in the hopes those hooves would disappear into thin air, just the way clouds sometimes do. Okay. It's a nice little house they have. I just have to say, it's a beautiful house. Jewel was afraid of everything. She hated thunder and lightning and was equally terrified of mice and mountain lions, even though she lived at Cloud Ranch. The one thing she swore she would never do, no matter what, was ride a horse. Florian Taylor tried everything to convince her otherwise. He bought her a pair of beautiful red boots and a cowgirl hat. He tried to explain what it felt like to gallop across the sea of grass at twilight, when the doves were flying close to the fields and the earth seemed endless. Jewel always listened politely, but she would not change her mind. She tossed the red boots into the very back of her closet and stuffed the cowgirl hat into a kitchen cabinet. And then one rainy night, Florian Taylor knocked on his granddaughter's bedroom door. It was a little after midnight, but Jewel was not asleep. She had been frightened by the way her curtain was blowing in the breeze, and by the beat of the rain against the roof. And so she was hiding under her bed. But when her grandfather called for her to hurry, she did. Grabbed a sweater and... But when her grandfather called for her to hurry, she did. Grabbing a sweater to pull over her nightgown, she followed Florian out of the house. Led by a pool of yellow lantern light, they ran through the rain to the stable where 40 horses were sleeping. Jewel could almost hear her heart pounding. There's Jewel. And then there's Florian, I guess. It says, okay. They passed by Snowbird's stall. Snowbird was the proudest of Florian's horses. This mare was spoiled and bad-tempered, and no one but Florian dared to ride her. But Snowbird was not the only one who had come to visit. It was the foal she had just given birth to. Florian, I really like the name Florian, it's really kind of cool, Florian. Florian hung the lamp on a wooden peg so Jewel could see. There was a pile of fresh hay with the tiniest foal in the world. Why, it looked more like a puppy than a pony. Unlike any other horse at Cloud Ranch, this one wasn't white. He was a deep chestnut brown with a black mane and tail. He was so silly looking and so very small from that for a moment Jewel forgot he was even a horse. And she laughed out loud. Wait a minute. So let's see, he was brown, chestnut brown with a black mane and tail. He was so silly looking and so very small that for a moment Jewel forgot he was a horse, and she laughed out loud. Okay. And I guess that's Snowbird. Right there, Snowbird. And okay. That's the way Snowbird feels, Florian says. He's too scrawny and little to be a real horse. She won't take care of him. Matter of fact, she tried to squash him like a bug. The foal shook his head and whinnied. In spite of his size, he was a horse, all right, and Jewel felt uneasy. She might have turned and run right then if her grandfather hadn't handed her a bottle of mare's milk, sweetened with sugar. "He's yours now," Florian Taylor called over his shoulder, his black raincoat swirling up behind him, as he left Jewel alone in the barn. Jewel stood there for a long time, too frightened to move. At last she went to the stall and fed the foal his bottle. He really was cute if you liked horses. If the very sight of them didn't make you shiver with fear. Okay. Okay, let's see. When the foal finished the bottle, he was drowsy. Jewel tiptoed out of the stall, took the lantern down from the peg, then headed back to the house. The sky was still inky and dawn was an hour away. Jewel thought she was finally free of the foal, but halfway to the house she heard something behind her. It was the clip-clop of little hooves. Jewel began to run, and the clip-clopping went faster, too. She dashed up the porch steps and raced inside with the clip-clopping still following her, right through the hallway and into a room. Finally, Jewel got into her bed and hid under the covers, but the little horse just stood there, breathing softly, smelling of hay. "Go away," Jewel whispered, but he wouldn't. Instead, the foal slept curled up on her rug. There's the foal right there. Oh. And then there she is walking back to the house. In the morning, Florian didn't even blink when Jewel came in for breakfast with the foal trailing behind. After that, the little brown horse was like a member of the family. Jewel called him Bug, and she quickly got used to the way he followed her around. When the cook, Marie, asked why Jewel was afraid of the other horses, but had no fear of Bug, Jewel laughed. "He's not exactly a horse," she said. "He eats like one," Marie said. "He runs like one. He stinks like one. He's not like the others," Jewel said. There's Jewel and Bug. And then there's some people up there, apparently. Okay. By the end of the summer, Bug was as big as a St. Bernard, too small to stay with the horses, too large to be a house pet. Jewel kept him tied to the front porch to make sure he didn't get into trouble. But one day, Jewel didn't tie the rope tightly enough, and Bug followed her to school. "It's a mule," someone cried. "No, it's a donkey," a girl laughed. "Hey, what do you call this thing?" one of the boys shouted at Jewel as Jewel went to lead Bug away. "It sure isn't a horse." "He's better than yours," Jewel heard herself say. "Prove it," the boy said. Jewel had never been on a horse, but now she pulled herself onto Bug's back. Even though Jewel was small, her feet almost touched the ground. On the count of 3, the horses took off. Jewel was so scared she closed her eyes. She didn't notice that the boys had suddenly pulled back on the horse's reins. "Turn left," the boy shouted to Jewel. "Slow him down." When Jewel opened her eyes, she saw they were racing straight towards a cliff. She tried to hold Bug back, but it was too late. Jewel had no choice. She jumped off. There was nothing to do but watch as Bug ran over the cliff. Okay. I guess he can fly. Okay. Everyone else headed back to the school. Poor Jewel walked to the edge of the cliff, expecting to find Bug crumpled at the bottom. But what she saw amazed her. At the moment Bug had gone over the cliff, he had unfurled a pair of wings. There he was out in the middle of the sky with nothing below him but clouds, as if it was the most natural thing in the world for a pony to be flying through the air. At first, Jewel was afraid to ride him, or was it fly him? Well, it looked like fly, to be honest. She never could tell. They started out slowly, a foot above the ground, then two, then higher. Jewel held on tight, but after a while she grew braver. She dared to loop-de-loop, then a sky circle, then a dive bomb. On Earth, Jewel was still her same nervous self, but in the sky she was fearless. She wished she could describe to her grandfather how it felt to fly above the sea of grass. She longed to tell him how a cloud tasted, how the wind whispered, but she didn't dare. She kept the secret of the flying horse, and it seemed no one would ever find out. But Bug's wings, after all, were like those of a bat, and completely hidden when folded. Jewel became so confident up in the air that she often fell asleep while Bug grazed among the treetops. She must have been sleeping the day they were spotted. A thin man in a black suit was standing beside his van, changing a flat tire on his way from here to there. The man, whose name was Morrison, was the ringmaster of a circus, and he never stayed in one place for long. Every evening Morrison boldly announced acts that would amaze and astonish, but now it was Morrison's mouth that dropped open. There above him was a flying horse, a pair of wings that could make a smart man rich. That night, Morrison and the circus strongman snuck onto Cloud Ranch before you could count to 3. They had Bug tied up in their van, and they headed towards the far side of town. Somehow Jewel knew. She ran to her window to see that Bug was no longer tied to the porch. Jewel grabbed her jacket and went out into the starless night. The ground was wet, so she could see the tire tracks from the circus van. She followed the trail away from Cloud Ranch to the abandoned field where the circus had set up. Jewel saw the circus van parked beside some trailers, but it was empty, so she crawled over to the big top. She lifted the canvas. Inside the tent was Inside the tent was pale blue, and a ceiling of gold stars. 6 little white horses ran in a circle, practicing for the night's show. Each time any of the horses was out of step, it was beaten by a tall, dark woman who held 2 whips. When Morrison brought Bug into the big top, Jewel wished she was brave enough to jump out and grab him, but she stayed where she was, watching carefully. What is this supposed to be? The woman in charge of the horses asked. Poor Bug was tied up in ropes. What an ugly, filthy creature. Take a look. Morrison cut one of the ropes and lifted one of Bug's wings. This filthy creature is going to make us rich. Nearby, a tiger paced in its cage, but Jewel didn't have time to be frightened. Not if she wanted to rescue Bug. First, she needed to disguise herself. In a big old trunk, she found a costume that would fit perfectly. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she was delighted to see a real circus girl looking back. That night, everyone from town came to see the show, but no one recognized Jewel. The air smelled of popcorn and cotton candy and horses. When Morrison shouted for the show to begin, the woman who was so cruel came racing in, lashing at Bug and the 6 white horses with her whip. As soon as Bug saw Jewel, he reared on his hind legs and was lashed 3 more times. "You foolish little pony," the cruel woman screamed. "I'll make you behave." Jewel could wait no longer. She ran into the ring and jumped on Bug's back. In her circus costume, she looked like part of the act, and everyone applauded, even those children who had teased her before, whistling and stomping their feet. Whistled and stomped their feet. "Get out of here," the woman who was so mean to horses demanded, which is exactly what Jewel planned to do. There she is, dressed up as a circus woman, or a circus girl. And then there's Bug and all the little white horses and that mean woman with the whip. Jewel leaned down and whispered to Bug, and immediately he unfurled his wings. The crowd gasped when his hooves lifted off the ground. Higher and higher, Bug flew up to the ceiling of stars. "Catch them!" cried Morrison, but it was too late for that. Bug and Jewel would have flown right through the top of the tent, had Jewel not looked down to see the 6 tiny horses all huddled together in the ring. They were the saddest-looking creatures she had ever seen. Bug and Jewel suddenly swooped down. People ran this way and that. Bug and Jewel dive-bombed, knocking off Morrison's hat, grabbing the cruel horse trainer's whips, and breaking them in half. "This way," Jewel shouted. "Follow us." Okay. When Bug flew through the door of the tent, the circus horses raced out after him. They ran through the town into the sea of grass. Jewel and Bug kept pace from above, beneath the stars, cutting across the inky blue night, the wind singing in their ears. That night the 6 little white horses slept in the stable next to Snowbird, who was quite amazed to discover they could dance on their hind legs and climb on one another's backs, building a tower that allowed the tiniest horse to pour out the extra buckets of grain that hung above the stall. In the morning, Florian Taylor found Jewel out on the front porch having breakfast with Bug. She was wearing the red boots she had kept at the back of her closet. She had taken out the cowboy hat and discovered it fit her perfectly. "Those look really good on you," Florian told his granddaughter. Jewel smiled. She led her grandfather out to the sea of grass and showed him what it was like to ride across the sky. Not that Florian was surprised. He had known exactly what he was giving Jewel on that rainy night when the little horse with wings had been born. Now and then on clear blue days, a shadow falls across the prairie. People of the town gaze upward. They stop knee-deep in the sea of grass and lift their hands to shade their eyes. For a minute or two, they might think they spy something up in the sky. "Great day for flying," Florian Taylor always says to his neighbors. On a day like this, no one has disagreed with him yet. Yep, a great day for flying indeed. Florian Taylor always says to his neighbors on days like this, and no one has disagreed with him yet. And it looks like we've got some birds there, and we have that flying horse. And that was Horsefly by Alice Hoffman. And all the art was the paintings were by Steve Johnson and Lou Fancher. You like this? This was actually a really clever book. I really enjoyed this. But yeah. If you like this content, make sure you like and subscribe and ring the bell so you know when I upload. Also, if you want to support me in any way, all that information will be in the description below. And as always, thanks for watching, everyone, and have a great day.